So people sometimes ask is, how do you add those tabs which show different parts of a drawing that I have in all of my plans? So in this video I'll show you how to do that using scenes and layers. So let's open the table that I drew in previous tutorials. And so now to add those scene tabs, we go into a window and then scenes. And let's add some scenes to this one. Let's add one scene and we'll call that one main. And you'll notice the tab has appeared as soon as I added a scene. And let's add a second scene. We'll call that one assembly. So right now those two scenes are actually identical. So let's change the view on one of these and I'll update the assembly one. And now if I click on main, you'll notice it transitions over to what the main scene looked like. Now that transition takes 2 seconds. SketchUp likes to do these animations. I find them a bit annoying, so let's modify that. So let's go into model info, and then under animations it's set to take 2 seconds. So let's make those take half a second so we don't have to wait as long. So now in the assembly view, I want to show how this goes together. So I don't want to have the top visible, and let's pull this joint apart. So now let's update that one, although that doesn't actually do anything, because what I've now done is I've actually changed the model. So if I go back to main, you'll see we actually have the same thing and it's modified. So we don't really want that. So I'm going to hit undo a couple of times. And what we want to do is we want to create a separate copy of this table that we're going to modify. So I'm going to take this whole table and I'm going to copy it just by doing a shift drag. And I'm going to make it move 150 centimeters this way. So I enter that down here. I couldn't put the cursor on it because that would move the table. So now let's go into the assembly view, and this is what most people will do, is they will put these tables far enough apart that you can't see the other one. So imagine this was several meters away. So let's update that view. And now I can take this table, and for instance I'll delete the top, and so here we're focusing on this one, and here we've got the other one. Now personally I don't like to put these really far apart because the drawing can get really confusing. So this is where the next part comes in. So let's pop up the layers, window, layers, and I'm going to add 2 layers here. There's already a layer 0, which is always the always visible default layer, so I need 2 more layers. And I'll call one main, just like my views, and I'll call another one assembly. So let's take the modified table and we'll put that one into the assembly layer. So we'll right click on here, entity info, and because we've got all these pieces selected, I'm just going to make that one part of assembly. And I'm going to select the first one and I'll make that one main. So now these two are actually in separate layers, and I can turn these on and off by turning on and off the layers. So in the assembly view, I want to only see the assembly version, and I'll uncheck the main one. And which layers are visible is actually part of the scene. So I'll update this scene here, and let's go back into main. And in the main scene, I don't want to see the assembly. And let's also update that. So now we can flip between those two. Now the one thing I don't like is how these things kind of flip back and forth. I would actually like these to actually appear to be part of the same table. So I'm going to take the table in the assembly view, which remember I moved that by 1.5 meters to the right, 150 centimeters. So I'm going to move it back. And let's click on assembly, and now we need to change our viewpoint. So I'm just going to drag this over so that we're once again looking at where we actually put the table, and I'll update that. So now if I click on main, you'll notice the table appears to be the same one, it's just the top pops off. And now because these things are actually separate objects, I can take this table and I'll turn it into a bit more of an assembly view. So let's tear apart this joint here, and let's also tear this joint apart. And let's focus in on how this joint goes together, and we'll update the drawing. And if I now go back to main, you'll see as I flip through here, it's very clear that what we're looking at is in fact this leg in the back here. Now the next thing we typically want to do with a drawing is we want to add some labels and dimensions. So let's start by adding a label, and I just have to click on here to get the label tool. If you don't have that toolbar selected, you can find that under Tools, Text. So let's call this a table leg. And now if we go to the other view, that label is not visible because that's actually attached to this table leg that's part of this particular view only. But if I now add a dimension here, so by clicking on here, or if you don't have the toolbar visible, you go under Tools, Dimensions, and let's add a dimension on here showing how big this leg is. Now the catch with that one is if I go to Main, you'll notice this dimension is still visible in here, and we really don't want that. And the reason is when we just drew this dimension, it gets drawn into the default layer. So I can go in here and I can put this into the assembly layer, and now just like everything else that's in the assembly layer, it's not visible in the main view. But if I want to draw a lot of these, it's easier to just select the current layer as the assembly layer, and now if I add more dimensions, these all get placed into the assembly layer. So now if I go into main, they're not visible. But this is a bit of a tricky sort of thing, because depending on which layer we have selected, sometimes if you draw things, it can get very confusing. Let me show you a pitfall of this. So let's open this part here. And I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to select Assembly, and I'm going to redraw this face, and let's pretend that I didn't remember them in the assembly layer. So there's our complete piece. And now let's go back to main, and let's close all the objects, and see now if we're in here in the main view, this part has a side missing, but as soon as we go in the assembly view, it doesn't have it missing, because this object here, let's go into Entity Info, this particular face is part of the assembly view, and this here is part of layer 0. So in general, when drawing objects, it's best to draw everything as layer 0. We can fix that if we've got everything as part of whatever else. So I'm just going to triple click on here and select everything to be part of layer 0, and that fixes that problem. So that's how to add labels and dimensions and deal with the whole multiple scene issue. And I'll talk a little bit more about layers and object behavior in my next video, because that's actually kind of a complicated topic.